we were talking about financing and how you go about creatively putting together the financing to buy that first property or the third one or the 10th one. I mean, that's one of the fun things about buying real estate is it seems like there's always a way. There's always a creative way to get from point A to point B. You know, there's a lot of stuff that you do, like you're not going to find a creative way to buy a truck. You're going to go in and either, you know, give them cash or you're going to finance it through, you know, their system. But there's so many things you can do with land, with, you know, lease to buy, you know, contract for deed from the, you know, from the person who owns it. You know, maybe you've got partners, you've got, you know, timber value on the property that you can, you know, realize that and use that against the down payment. Then, like you were talking about the first homeowner,
you know, FHA loans.
Yeah, some of those. Then there's also like young farmer loans. There's lots of stuff you can do. And then you can do options. There's so many things, so many ways that you can be creative. Well, the bankers, for the most part, have seen them all. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, those guys have seen, if they've got any experience at all, let's say they've been in the lending business for 20 years, they've seen all of that stuff. So you basically need somebody who's in your camp that's going to take the time to help you figure out what can be done. You know, and there's going to be people who have more experience too. You know, like I've done a few different things, so I've got some idea of what can be done. But you know, even you work for Jacob Hart with High Point. You know, Jacob's seen a bunch of deals. Mm-hmm. You know, so you can find people who have experience that you can pick their brain. But a really good banker, somebody who likes you, like you said in the last episode, you know, should it be a small town banker? Well, I think it should be somebody that you know.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, because those guys are going to have more vested interest in seeing you be successful than somebody just in some, you know.
Yeah, wearing a suit in Wall Street or whatever.
Yeah, or you know, even like you go to Des Moines to some big bank, and yeah, I mean, you're one in, you know, 15 projects they're working on that day.
Yeah.
You know, whereas in the small towns, you might be one or two or three projects that they're working on that day. Mm-hmm. So I just feel like you're going to get better service on that level from somebody that you know. That would be the ideal bank, you know, land purchaser relationship. So they can help you, you know, to come up with ways to get from point A to point B. You know, like the last farm that we bought, my banker came up with better ways of doing it than I did. You know, like I had this plan in mind. I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this down payment. We don't have this cash. And he came up with a way to leverage some of the other assets that we owned and use that to replace the down payment. So, I mean, you know, sort of like that, when we bought that first share in that corporation, we had to put up a, you know, Ford Explorer for collateral. They can be, if they want to loan you the money, they can find creative ways to help you to do it. So I guess that's the answer to your question, is don't get locked in to one thought that, you know, the deal has to go down this way. Because with real estate, there's just so many moving parts and so many different ways that you can structure the deal that you don't want to get into that mindset. Mm-hmm. So you want to keep an open mind. Dream Farm is brought to you by Whitetail Institute Food Plot Blends, the Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail app, and Hoyt Archery. Where were we? Gosh. On my journey, I bought my neighbor. I sold out of the Subchapter S corporation. So now I'm sitting there thinking, my other neighbors are going to sell. I just know they are. They've started, you know, making a little bit of rumblings about it. You know, they'd come by, you know, and say, well, you know, we've thought about. And as soon as somebody says we've thought about, they're ready to do it. So you need to figure out how to be ready. If you're buying your dream farm now, you're adding to it. We're not talking about the investment pieces that you're like, okay, I'm going to own this for a while and then resell it. We're talking about building the dream farm. You only have one chance. I shouldn't say this, but the old saying is you got one chance in your lifetime to buy your neighbor's land. You know, you can't just say, well, we're not going to try. We just can't do it. You know, you've got to at least figure out, how can I do it? So I felt like the tide was moving in that direction. So I took 40 acres of tillable land off the one end of the 400 acres that we owned at that time. And it was really nice flat dirt. And now, I mean, I don't know what it would be worth, in that area, a lot more than what I sold it for. But I sold it for quite a bit more than I bought it for because it was part of that whole recreational, quote unquote, recreational land parcel. It was just the best dirt. And I found a neighbor in that area that wanted it. He was a big farmer. And I said, I'll survey it off. I'll make sure that we got the corner posts, with stakes in the ground so we know where this land is. I would like to sell you this 40. And so he said yes. As soon as he said yes, and I felt comfortable that he was going to move through or follow through, I started looking for something to buy with the money from the sale of that 40. I didn't want to pay Jack down, the guy who owned the loan on that 275 acres. So I had to go back to him and convince him that the 275 minus the 40 still had enough collateral to carry that loan that he'd originally given me. And I was able to convince him of it, fortunately. So I didn't have to give him the proceeds of the sale of that 40, which in a normal banking environment, you might have to. Like if you got land that you borrowed money to buy and you sell part of it, the bank's not going to go, oh, well, good for you. They're going to say, well, give us that, because we own, that's part of your collateral. You can't just sell off part of your collateral and put it in your pocket, right? But anyway, I was able to convince Jack to do it based on, what land was selling for and so forth. So anyway, I've got the proceeds from 40 acres, and I think I sold it for like $2,500 an acre or somewhere around that neighborhood. Maybe it's a little bit less than that. So I've got roughly $100,000. This can be a down payment on another piece of land. And land was still not expensive there yet. So I think it was, good stuff was selling for $1,500 an acre, roughly. So, $100,000, that means I could buy $400,000 worth of land. So what's $400,000 divided by 1,500, over 200 acres, I could purchase with that $100,000 for the down payment. Well, as I was kind of looking around, I had a fella, and I had taken some timber off the 400. I'd had a guy come in and cut some of the trees, and so I had a little bit more to play with than just that 100,000. I had let's say 150,000, and but this guy also said, I know of properties that have timber value. He said, if you'll let me cut them, I'll tell you where they're at. And I'm like, okay. So he kind of became my property finder. And he found me 2 properties within the course of about 3 or 4 months. So I was able to use the sale of that 40 acres plus the amount of money I'd taken off timber from the original 400, that $150,000, I was actually able to buy 400 acres of land that had high timber value. One of them was 240 acres, beautiful piece of land. Gosh dang, I wish I could have kept it. I could have kept it, I guess, but I chose not to. It was an hour from our home, and beautiful. Had some nice walnut trees on it, and that's what he was after. And then the other one was an island on one of the rivers in eastern Iowa, and that one was a couple hours in the other direction. So I had one property that was an hour west, and another one that was 2 hours east that I bought with the proceeds of that. Well, by now, you're talking about the banking relationship. By now, the bankers were starting to go, Bill's kind of onto something here, because they were starting to see it work. They had to see it work before they got excited about, being more a part of it. Because, they're conservative too. They have to answer to their owners and their shareholders and whoever, they can't just, dive in and throw money away. So they were seeing this work, and they were willing to loan, maximum, the maximum amount that I think I was paying 20% down is all. I got them down to 20% down. So I bought those 2 pieces of property that had all this timber value on them. So anyway, I might be moving too fast because now I've been doing all the talking. So what questions do you have at this point?
So I guess, like the famous saying, your network is more important than your net worth.
Yeah.
So I mean, like even in land buying, even in business, land buying, that's the case. It
Yeah.
seems like there's a lot of moving parts in your process.
Yeah.
To where like, this guy helped you, determine what 2 properties to buy.
Yeah.
This guy, he was buying for you with an option to sell and
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And if you're not willing to, I won't say it's not a game. It's a business. I mean, buying and owning land, at the end of the day, maybe it's a legacy, but it's still a business. I mean, you've got a bunch of money in it. It's an investment. You have to be a serious player in that. It's like, I don't even begin to want to buy land or stocks in the stock market. I have no idea what I'm doing. I would just buy the wrong stuff and I'd lose all my money. But with land, at least I feel like I understand the sellers and I understand the buyers. It makes sense, because we're hunters. We get recreational land. I don't get tillable. I won't buy tillable. I don't understand it. I don't know how to value it. But I know how to figure out hunting land. Like, ooh, I really want this. And if I really want it, then that means I can probably sell it. So all I got to do is, find those that are undervalued that I really want. So you got to cast a wide net. So anyway, did I get off topic?
No, I think that answered my question. I mean, it leads right into another one I had was, like there's a lot to be said about partnerships and like maybe they don't work out so well. Is there any time where, when you involved a partner where you got burnt, or I guess maybe that just, leads into the next time where you're not going to make the same mistake, would you avoid getting into partnerships, or since, that's how you started, you would recommend that?
I think you treat it only as a starting point. I think that the goal in a partnership is to be out of it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'd ever look at a partnership as permanent, because you always want it to on both parties to understand that this is a temporary thing. My goal is to own land on my own name, not in a partnership. Whether I buy you out of this one someday, or you buy me out of this one, or we sell this together and we go our separate ways.
Is that like like a written agreement, or is that just kind of a handshake mutual agreement?
I think it has to be, the essence of it that makes it work legally has to be in writing.
Yep.
Like the buy-sell part, like how do I get out? If I want out and you want out or whatever, how do we do this? But then it has to be the handshake beyond that, where you understand that my goals aren't to be in a partnership for my whole life. And sometimes they really work. And if that's the case, then you keep moving, you keep doing it. But the expectation right up front is that this may not work.
Yeah.
So let's assume that it won't, and let's have a way for us both to, comfortably move on. Or, in my situation, the guy that I worked with, and we'll come back around to another piece of how I put this together. Oops. A minute 50. Another component of it was working with another guy to buy and sell, because obviously the opportunities during those days were great, way more than I could afford to take advantage of. I mean, I bought 2 really cherry properties there that had a lot of timber value. They were really cool hunting properties. They made all the sense in the world. There was a lot of moving parts related to those, that we just don't have time to dive into. And maybe if we do an episode on, how to timber a property, or, whatever, how to buy land with timber value and, all that stuff, then we can go into more detail there. But let's just stop by saying these had, timber value. What was I talking about?
We were talking about partnerships.
Yeah. So I had a guy then that stepped in and said, hey, Bill, if you want to be the legs, I'll be the money behind it. Let's go out and find some more of these. So that was another part of my business at that time, was working with a partner. And again, it was Larry Kendall, the guy that helped me out early on when we bought that 125 acres with the house. So he and I went into business together of finding, upgrading, and then reselling recreational land using Larry's money. So we'll come back around to how that worked later. But that was a partner that, we had a handshake and we had an email. And that was it. I mean, we didn't have a contract, but that was Larry, though. I mean, I don't know that I would do that with anybody else. I mean, Larry was really, really good to work with, very trustworthy. You know, he was never going to be one that was going to come back later and take advantage of me. And I knew that. Oh, sorry, folks. Time's up. So, gosh, these go fast.
I know.
We're
an hour in.
and we're like 10% into my journey. No, we're further than that. We're probably at least halfway through my journey. But anyway, so now I've got 400 acres at home, sold off 40. So now I've got 360 acres at home that I want to add to because I feel like my neighbors are going to have an interest in selling sometime. So I need to figure out, okay, I need to have something to generate that seed money to purchase their property. So I took that 40 acres plus some money that I'd made from selling timber on that original 400, and that money went to purchase these 2 outlying properties. You know, one an hour to the west, one 2 hours to the east. They had a lot of timber value. That's where we're at in the journey. So I think the next episode then we're going to have to talk about, you know, how I turned those 2 outlying pieces into another one that bordered me, and you know how that was done. So I guess we're halfway through the series. What do we got? 4 episodes in, so we probably have another roughly 4 to go. So hope you're enjoying it. I know it seems kind of long-winded, and I apologize for that. There's just so much that goes into this process, and so many things that I've learned that, you know, Ethan is absorbing. He's around this stuff every day with his other job, working for High Point. That you know, if I can pass this along to him or to, you know, somebody in the audience, you know, viewing, then great. I'm not holding back any secrets. I guess that's the one thing is like, you know, people are getting that like this is really what I did. And I know there are people who do this stuff and they think, Bill, don't tell them about that. Well, there aren't that many secrets left, you know, but by the time you're done with my journey, there won't be any secrets left from my standpoint. We'll come back again in the next episode and continue. But I appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you right back here again for the next episode of Dream Farm. And remember to always dream big.